Alright, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say, Call Halalim, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harakach Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of God Allah Chaim, which is great millstone in the Lashawan Tahar, where I learned this truth from and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to you Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. As always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harakach Wadash for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harakach Wadash allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. Going to the book of Ezekiel, and I'm just going to focus on one particular scripture. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And this is Yahweh controlling Russia, which Russia occupies the same land of Gog, which belonged to Japhet. That's how, the seers and also the scholars, have identified as Gog from being from Russia. So it says, and I will bring thee forth, right? So Yahweh is going to bring Russia forth, meaning their armies, to combat, as we can see now, America and Israel. It says, and all thine army, so all their forces, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. And if you've been in this truth for a few decades or close to it, Russia has been making an effort. Let me see if I could bring out the on how to spell. Let me see, maybe 2010. Let me see. Okay, it actually was said in October 7th, 2020 or 2011. It says Russia leader tells top generals prepare for Armageddon, or in the Hebrew Harmageddon, which means mount of troops, which is going to be fought in the Levant. You know, it says a grim federal secret services report on Prime Minister Putin's plan to meet China's leader Hu Jintao in Beijing next week warns that both Russian and Chinese military forces are being placed on their highest alert in anticipation of a massive land invasion believed being planned by the United States of both the Middle East and Central Asia. So, and I believe, which there's no such thing as the Middle East in biblical geography. It says Asia Major, Asia Minor. Iran considered to be Central Asia. What countries consist of? Okay, so they already invaded Central Asia because, if they already got, Central Asian countries, nations of Central Asia with distinct geographic and cultural identities. So they already invaded Iran and Afghanistan, you know, and they're already in the Middle East. And this is from, leaked intelligence reports from the Federal Security Services in Russia that this is what Russia was planning for the United States to do. It says, and also not just the Russians, but they were planning also with the Chinese. It says the plans for this total global war the Americans are preparing to launch were first revealed to China's Ministry of State Security by the former Blackwater mercenary Brian Underwood, who is currently being held by U.S. authorities for spying, in which we reported on in our 4th October report titled China Warns Russia a Coming American Great Event. We're days away from that great event. Within hours of Putin's reading of the coming U.S. plans for total global war, this report says he wrote a rare article in the Izvestia Daily outline a grand project to integrate post-Soviet states into closer cooperation. Not them also having hooks put into their jaws, right? That's also them being turned back because they're going to be formulating that old Soviet Union along with, added allies of their North uh, country coalition, which it goes into a lot of their allies in the preceding verses. So it says within hours of Putin's reading of the coming U.S. plans for total global war, this report says he wrote a rare article in the Izvestia Daily outline a grand project to integrate post-Soviet states into closer cooperation, scheduled on an emergency trip to China to meet with Hu and ordered the FSB to notify China's MSS of the arrest and detention of their spy, Tun Shininin, who was captured last year for attempting to steal sensitive information on Russia's most powerful anti-aircraft system. It says, as we have detailed in our previous mentioned report, the new great game moves being planned by the Americans that is striking fear into both Russia and China includes one, the deliberate implosion of both the US and EU economies in order to destroy the global financial system. And that's what they're doing right now with Iran and all of OPEC. And if you were tuned into a lot of these speakers like Lindsey Williams, instead of getting on people for watching them, he went into all this. This is how they're going to destroy the dollar and bring in the MOTB. This is the part of the movie that we're in. We're in the part in which the Most High rises these nations against each other and collapse this financial system. But the end is not yet. It says that has been in place since the ending of World War II. Two, the launching of a massive conventional war by the US and EU on the North American, African, and Asian continents to include the Middle East, right? So I don't know if it's going to plan to their plans, but eventually EU, which a lot of those EU nations compose NATO, which is the beast in Revelation, the conglomerate of nations forming a coalition, they're going to turn on America, as you're starting to see in the news. This might be a lot of reading though, so. And three, during this all-out war, the deliberate releasing of bio-warfare agents meant to kill off millions, if not billions, of innocent civilians. Going back to the pestilence, man. These are things that they've been planning since 15 years ago. Verse 4 says, at the height of this war, the U.S. and its allies will sue for peace and call for a new global order to be established in order to prevent the total destruction of our planet. And this is all I've been saying, in which the scriptures lined up with on how they're going to try to implement the MOTB. Is going to be order out of chaos, you know? So whether or not tactical nuclear missiles are considered to be conventional warfare weapons, let me see. They're not. Well, they're lesser yields, but I think they're going to use a nuke, which they have already had. So it's not like I'm being a false prophet, you know. But of course, I think they're gonna use a nuke before Yahweh Shah returns. But the ultimate nuclear destruction is not going to be until he returns and until that MOTB is made mandatory. So this is the exact same thing that they did, with the League of Nations with the United Nations, and now they're trying to do the same thing with the New World Order. It comes after suing for peace. That's where you have peace and safety and then sudden destruction. Let me see. I think it's first that's 5. Okay. This is First Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. It says, "For when they shall say peace, when they shall sue for peace," right? It only makes sense right when they're about to fill their belly. It says, "And safety, then sudden destruction," those 200 million warheads. Because I'm pretty sure that, well, I'm not pretty sure, speak as a man, assuming that that evil thought would be under the lines of "fuck your new world order, kill these motherfuckers." You know, a lot of you people are gonna be dead soon, man. And you know, I have the mentality that death don't rule over me. Death is conquered through Yahweh Shah. You know, if I die, so what? I'm going back to the spirit world, man. You know, but the goal is to die in Yahweh Shah. As you know, hopefully we lived in Yahweh Shah. It says, "Then sudden destruction come upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Right, because that's also goes into Jeremiah. Just bear with me. I'm looking for a particular verse. It might be in 51. If I don't see it, I'll go ahead and look for it. Yeah, let me look for it then. 51:42. So this is Isaiah chapter. That ain't it. Yeah, it's co-pilot. I'm gonna get it. Slovakia. Um, so going off First Thessalonians 5:3. Um, hold on, this ain't the verse either I'm looking for. On the fight. Or was it in oh, it's in the wrong. No. Call together. Let me go back to 50. It also says, come against her from the utmost border, which that means they're going to come from Russia. Alaska. And that's why you see so much naval and military activity in that region, especially concerning Russia and China building up their forces. Hmm. I bring this, I look at it all the time. I'm trying to think. Let me see. Nation Summit. Set yourself. Well, I'll bring it out later. How about that? I'll find it and I'll bring it out later in the video. But hold on. Let's go back to this article because it tells a lot in these 4 points. And this is written in 2011. Reading the 4 point, it says, at the height of this war, the U.S. and its allies will sue for peace. That's that peace and safety. Right? It says, and call for a new global order to be established, which that brings in Europe, going back to the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is those European nations. And who is over there and deals with financial orders of this system? One of those three frogs. It would be London. Who operates London? Those the black nobility and the 13 families, the Illuminati. And they're going to tell you that, they want you to have a C hip. You know, it says this past week, an unidentified source within the U.S. Department of Defense further warned that the Obama regime was preparing for a massive tank-on-tank war and that the U.S. military forces are expecting something conventional and big coming down the pipe relatively soon. You know, and that's going to be the battle that is fought in the Levant. It says how close this war may be. The FSB is the report states that it will be much sooner than later, as the Americans have pre-positioned in Iraq nearly 2,000 of their M1 Abrams main battle tanks, have pre-positioned another 2,000 of them in Afghanistan and between the Middle East and Asia, have likewise put into these war theaters tens of thousands of other typed armored vehicles. The final piece for this activation of this massive armored force standing poised like a dagger in the heart of both Asia and the Middle East, the FSB says, is the call for a full mobilization. So that's a marker in this timeline, is a full mobilization, right? It says of over 1.5 million American reserves forces, which can occur at a moment's notice, as the U.S. is currently at war, needs further authorization from its Congress to expand their areas of operation. So, well, I ain't even gonna ask that question. Which they got those reserves already. It says important to note about the American plan for global domination through massive warfare is that it is not really a secret, and as curiously revealed on the 10th anniversary of the September 11th attacks upon the United States, which was an inside job by Mossad, when the U.S. National Security Archive released a memo written by former U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld in September 2001, wherein he warned if the war does not significantly change the world's political map, and they're changing the political map right now by them destroying all those oil fields of the OPEC nations to destroy the petrodollar, because they want to destroy this system in order to bring in this digital system. You know, It says the U.S. will not achieve its aim. And they're not going to achieve its aim. Why? Because the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, in his movie, which he's the director, the end scene, the climax is Esau, the United States, which is ran by, or let me clean that up. Esau, the so-called white man that runs the United States. The United States is going to get wiped off the face of the earth, man. It says, to what the aim of the United States is as their war against the world has now entered its 10th year. The FSB says is to prevent at all cost the implosion of the US dollar as the main reserve currency. So that's what's going on right now. The implosion of the US dollar as the main reserve currency, the petrodollar of the present global economic system before the West envisioned New World Order, which is going to be the internet of everything. And you're going to be connected to it via a microchip, which is going to be the key that you need to open up, life sources for yourself in order to buy or sell, to do business, right? It says the first threat to the Americans' master plan for global hegemony came in November 2000 when the former Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein quit accepting US dollars for oil and instead stated his country will only accept euros. In less than 10 months, the US was attacked. And they were attacked by whom? Those Israelis, which is the Amalekites, and used that as an excuse to topple Hussein and reestablish the US dollar as the world's main reserve currency. Because in all actuality, that dollar is really, Amalekite. It says, interesting to note is the failure of Libya's former leader, Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency that would serve as an alternative to the US dollar and allow African nations to share the wealth, but which, like Iraq's Hussein plan, brought a swift and brutal invasion by the Americans and their Western allies to keep it from happening. The only nation that has successfully abandoned the dollar is Iran, who since February 2009 abandoned all American currency, opted instead to value their own oil and gas in euros. Iran, however, and unlike oil-rich Iraq and Libya, has not been attacked due to the Iranians having acquired from Ukraine between 6 to 10 nuclear-armed X-55 missiles, range of 2,000 miles in 2005, which I heard that way back then too, which very well may be true because, when the Soviet Union broke up, a lot of those satellite states who maintained nuclear technology, they were selling it on the black market. I'm pretty sure there's a nuclear device that you can get right now on the black market, man. It says Russia and China in turn stopped the West from another war this week by their vetoing the U.S.-backed plan of the United Nations Security Council to turn Syria into another Libya, which we're already past that point. They already got Syria too. So angry did the Americans become that their furious UN envoy Susan Rice stormed out of the meeting after the West didn't get what it wanted. It says, and this is just proof that these people are nothing but actors. It says, even worse for the West war plan against Syria was its president warning this week that his nation was attacked by NATO, he would cause to be fired hundreds of missiles into Israel's most populated city of Tel Aviv within 6 hours, which would, of course, bring about a catastrophic nuclear response. Fast forward, Tel Aviv's getting its ass turned into rubble, man. Which these you can't expect these damn devils to tell you the truth. You already see the bloopers of all these deep fake AI generated Benjamin Not a Jew videos. And I'm gonna stand with the lot that I casted in Yahweh's name that he's in the spirit world, man. They had this fucking social media freak, this YouTuber, disclosing his location, pointing exactly where he was on his live YouTube, and they clipped his ass, man. I don't got no dog in the fight. I'm just the press, you know. But the irony of that is that's how you Jakes be, getting the drop on each other in America, man. Getting the coordinates off of live streams, man. That's why I don't like taking pictures. I don't like showing my face. I'm very discreet, you know. If you want to see me when I'm doing the camp videos, man. That's how I feel about it. Or if the spirit is on me to do videos showing my face, then watch those videos, man. But yeah, has already happened in Tel Aviv within 6 hours. But it wasn't Syria, it was Iran. It says, and in a preemptory move to counter the planned American blitzkrieg into Central Asia and Pakistan from Afghanistan, America has already lost Afghanistan. So, hey, what this is telling me is that their plans it's not going according to plan, man. And that's what a nigga in the world told me, man. When he was talking about going and busting licks or whatever, it don't ever go according to plan. It says Indian Army Chief General V.K. Singh warned yesterday that thousands of Chinese military forces have now moved into Pakistan occupied Kashmir, joining an estimated 11,000 more than believed to have entered that region in the past year. To the coming deliberate implosion by the U.S. of the global economy. So what is going on right now is deliberate to bring about the MOTB, man. In this digital system, the dollar gotta die. You people are gonna suffer. They're gonna release deadly diseases that is gonna kill millions, if not billions, of people. It's not just only these rich elite bankers' plans to reduce population to under 500 million, but the Heavenly Father has a plan to reduce population to whatever number is of His choosing. We don't know. But we do know, according to our history book, which is the Bible, right? The last time that He destroyed the earth, which was the first death, which was by water, He only survived 8 souls. And this is the first time Yahweh Shai is going to war. The first and the last time. The first and the last spirit created by the Heavenly Father is now in the generation where he's allowed to go to war. It says, to the coming deliberate implosion of the U.S. of the global economy, the FSB further says in the report, it now appears certain after a new report emerged as past from Philippa Malmgren, a former economics advisor to President George W. Bush, stating that Germany was preparing to abandon the euro and has ordered the printing of Deutschmarks to replace it. Most frightening of everything in this FSB report, however, is the reply Putin gave to Russia's top generals yesterday when asked what preparations should be made, and he answered, "Prepare for Armageddon." So Russia has been saying, "Prepare for Armageddon," man, and they've been preparing. Right. So let's go back to Ezekiel. It says, "And bring forth." This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 4. I'm just start at the top again. It says, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thy armies." So these nations are basically playing you Americans, man. It says, "Horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords." So they're gonna be they're gonna be fitted to the rooter to the tutor, man. You know, they're gonna have all their high tech gear. This is the war to end all wars, right? And the first nation, because a lot of times uh, scripture, lists according to level of importance, right? So the first nation you see is Persia, which in I believe 1935, Persia changed its name to Iran. So that's talking about Iran today. It says Ethiopia and Libya with them. So Libya and Ethiopia are soon to be getting involved in the future in this war. All of them, they're going to be on the side of Russia. All of them with shield and helmet. It says Gomer, which is Turkey, right? And Israel already hit one of Turkey's. I think a missile fell on their territory. Let's go ahead and get it. Missile. So this is what they're allegedly saying, but what's happening is you have Israel attacking these countries and making it seem as if it's Iran doing it to try to get these other nations involved in this war. But it says, and it's dated March 4th, 2026. On March, it says Turkey reported that a ballistic missile launched from Iran was intercepted by NATO air and missile defense systems before it could enter Turkish airspace. But we already know the relationship that Turkey has with Russia, despite Turkey being in NATO, right? It says, and all his bands, so all their armies, and they got a massive tank force along with Egypt. And going back to that article, it was talking about a massive ground war. It says the House of Togomar, which is, Armenia, Azerbaijan, despite them fighting each other right now, they're going to link up with Russia too, because they both have ties to Russia. And Russia is actually, if the cruel Lord Donald J. Trump don't get involved, is the mediator between those two countries. You know? But you're going to start to see a lot of things come out, which makes these people even more disgusted with America, because America, you know, zeroing in on the so-called white man is being made small. He's being made despised because all his wickedness is being brought out. It says of the north quarters and all his bands and many people with thee. You know, it says, "Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself." So these, if you can't tell me that Iran hasn't been preparing for itself. You know, they said they're still on their stockpile of missiles from a decade ago. They haven't even released or shot any missiles that uh, is more modern. They're shooting all their old missiles and causing all this destruction, man. That they don't have the balls to report on, man. Which we know what's really going on because we know the scriptures, and we know that these people are liars. They were born to lie, according to the scriptures. It says, it says, "Be thou a guard unto them." And you got a lot of people that say that Russia's not helping, particularly Iran. And you're just misinformed, man. It's the word for guard.
Strong's H 4929. Mishmar. Mishmar.
Mashamar. Um, to ward, to watch, guard, diligence, uh, the guard post, act of guarding, observances, and okay, even dealing with the word observances, right? Uh, Russia is giving Iran targeted intelligence, through their satellite observing the enemy forces. So I said in the prompt, what about intelligent targeting, sharing, in the sale of Su-57 purchases and missile program assistance? It says intelligence and targeting support was been reported real-time intel on U.S. forces. Recent U.S. media reporting says Russia has been providing Iran with intelligence on the locations of U.S. forces and assets in the Middle East, warships, radars, and other systems during periods of heightened tension in Iranian missile drone activity. Effect: that kind of feed doesn't mean Russia is co-firing Iranian strikes, but it can sharpen Iran's targeting picture and reduce uncertainty about where U.S. assets are positioned at any given time. How to read it. This is operational support, not a formal intelligence agency on paper. It fits the broader pattern since 2022. Russia gets Iranian drones and missiles for Ukraine. Iran gets ISR training and higher end hardware access in return. You know, Um, so even going to observance and TV. This is Edmund Online. The word observance, mid 13th century act performed in accordance with prescribed usage. A care, concern, act of paying attention. They're paying attention to something, which is the military movements. Also, act of keeping customs, attention, respect, regard, but watch over. What about they're watching over those military forces. Also says to watch. So that's exactly what Russia's been doing. Now, is Russia going to send troops to help, you know, um, Iran fight uh, the Americans on that front? Yes, because in the Bible it says there's a place in which is going to be called the travelers of God, right? And it talks about that in Ezekiel 39, right? The valley of Haman God. So let's look up the valley, which is going to be, I believe, in Jordan. Hold on. So, so this is where the Russian troops are going to end up being buried at. The Valley of Haman Gog is described in Ezekiel 39 as the burial place of Gog's, which is Russia, defeated armies, but the text never gives a fixed ancient name. What we can locate is the region Ezekiel points to, and that points consistently to east of the Dead Sea in what is today Jordan, along the ancient Transjordan travel corridor, right? So those Russian troops are going to be sent off and they're going to be buried here in Jordan. Because, mind you, this war is going to be fought in the Levant. But I'll go ahead and read Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 11. It says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Russia a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers or travelers, because they're traveling all the way from Russia, on the east of the sea, which is the Dead Sea, the east of would be Jordan, and it shall stop the noses of the passengers or travelers, and there shall they bury Russia's armed forces, and all his multitude, all his allies, and they shall call it the valley of Haman Gog," right? And we always have to keep in mind that Russia are Edomites too, right? So let's go back. So despite uh, Russia also providing Iran with surveillance, what else are they being a guard as far as them providing equipment to Iran? and they've been providing equipment to Iran. So from between just 2020 and 2025, combat aircraft, they have Yak 130 trainers, which you heard a report of one being shot down in the beginning of the war. You Su-35 fighters, which you haven't heard anything about. Their Su-35s because they have Air Force bases underground. Let's see. See, you got the pictures right here. And this is a whole fighter jet. So these people are not no stupid people, man. And you haven't heard of a Su-35 being shot down, man. You haven't heard of an Mi-28 attack helicopter being shot down because they're all stored in underground military Air Force bases, man. And then the planes that you've seen being hit on surface level, a lot of those were just pictures drawn into the concrete, man. That's why Donald Trump had to come out and said these are very, very smart people. Well, these people are the same people that invented chess. Also, status of as of 2020, 2025, Yak 130 delivered, Su-35 MI 28 deals finalized, delivery reported as underway, starting. Part of quid pro quo. I believe that stands in the Latin for this or that. For Iranian drones used by Russia and Ukraine. Air defense and major systems reports concerns about S-400 or other advanced systems. You haven't heard anything about that. You've just been hearing about uh, old air defense systems. It says no public confirmation of S-400 delivery to Iran. Often mentioned in policy, think tank analysis as a potential next step. Training tech transfer, Yak 130 operational training, possible Su-35 Mi-28 integration support, ongoing expected, implies avionics, tactics, maintenance, and simulator support, space surveillance, KM satellite, and follow-on cooperation. Russia launched Iran's Kenyan EO satellite. Further cooperation discussed. Dual use, and mind you, Russia has been planning since 2011. We just read the article from 2011. They've been getting prepared for what this damn devil is doing, man. It says dual use ISR value for Iran's military planning. Broader defense cooperation frameworks, MOUS, sanctions destinations referencing major weapon systems. Deepening since 2022, U.S. Western sources highlight a growing two-way arms axis. Everything below is Russia to Iran only, not Iran. So they've been in military cooperation because they're neighbors, man. And rumor has it is that there's tunnels. Oh, man, let me see if I can bring that up. I don't see what they say. So according to Esau, he don't got no evidence. But rumor has it is that they have tunnels that lead from Iran to Russia and from Iran to China. And why couldn't they have that? Because the cartels have tunnels that lead into the United States. Thousands of them. So essentially they're not really preventing anybody from, coming here. All it takes is money, and those cartels, you know, they're mad about the shakeup. And I've been seeing a few video clips. They going crazy out there, man. Right. But yeah, that's all I had on that. Pretty much, proving that, or at least briefly proving that Russia is doing this prophetic thing that it needs to do. But real soon they're gonna mobilize. They're gonna stop playing with Ukraine. But they don't want to be they don't want to be like America, being stretched too thin, especially dealing with you know a a stronger power, a stronger opponent, a dumb but stronger opponent, just like any or most of these big brolic or tall niggas. They want people to, well, they hope that people are in fear of them because of their size or their height. Not knowing that it's Yahweh that decides the battles. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm gonna say Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.